Welcome to Season 1, Episode 37 of Digital Dissection, where we take a closer and possibly unnecessary look at some of our favorite properties. Today's episode features legendary actor of TV and film, Lew Temple. The former minor league baseball player, Walking Dead alum, frequent collaborator with Rob Zombie, and roundhouse kick magnate sits down with Mark to talk his career, how he honors his characters who die too soon, as well as some meaningful life advice.
If you got here by accident, however, you can find us by searching for Digital Dissection, a nerd podcast, wherever you listen to your favorite shows. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also continue the conversation on our blog. If you like reading, that is. We write stuff. Pay us a visit and check out the extra content we share during the week, where we also look at some additional pop culture news. So welcome back, folks, to Digital Dissection. Today's episode features a very special guest, known for his wide range of acting ability, whether it be in horror, westerns, or even the damn literal zombie apocalypse itself. He is the recipient of the Gulf Coast Film Festival's Lifetime Achievement Award, and is easily one of the most charismatic and infectious personalities gracing screens of all sizes. We welcome to the show, Lew Temple. How are we doing, Lew?
Hey, Mark, that was such a kind invitation to join your show, and what a lovely greeting. Thank you for all those nice things you said. You know, I always feel like if you get in a Lifetime Achievement Award that, you're done. And I feel like I've still got some things to do. So when I got that award at the Gulf Coast Film Festival, I was like, I might not accept this. I think I still got one or two better ones. Can we save this for a couple of years down there until I'm 80? But it was nice. And infectious is, in these days with all that's gone on, it's. I'm glad you used it in a warm, inviting way with me, because we've certainly had our share of infectious disease in the last 2 years now going on.
It definitely was a word that as I looked at it on the page, I went, if this was a year and a half ago, I might have rewritten it, but it really does describe you as best I can, because I remember going back as far as I can. I remember seeing you on, the original Walker, Texas Ranger when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so I have been, watching you my whole life, basically. And
that was great. People forget how good a show that was and what it stood for at that time. It was a beautiful, just metaphor, good versus evil. It was very formulaic. But I have to say, before we get too far off, just a tip of the cap to Chuck Norris, who always was so enthusiastic. He was so supportive of the show, and he delivered. He was like a coach. I mean, before we did an episode, he'd come in and give a big pep talk, and guys, I'm not the best actor, but I'll do what I can, and you guys are all here to help the show be better, and thank you, and anything you need. I mean, it was great. I know there's a lot of jokes made about Chuck, but he's a good dude, man. It was a good show, and it was fun. It was so funny, Mark, and this is that, I would do different characters on that show.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it was kind of in a day and age, and I'm aging myself now, that I guess they didn't think people were watching. So I'd show up with a mustache, or I'd show up with, they put a wig on me, or, a hat, and I'd be just different guys. It was ridiculous. They'd no more do that today than they would have a cow do those lines. But and then finally I did a role where I was this guy that was nefariously aware of what the trouble was in Dallas. And, Chuck would come to me and say, I know who's, doing this. And I'd tell him a lie, and then I'd go to jail, and he'd figure it out. But finally I got killed. It was the last season, and I was killed by a gangster that was moving in on my Dallas territory. And that character was played by Frank Stallone, Sly's brother. And then Walker had, this is this is how far they had slipped. Walker had to investigate my murder. So it was really, but it was great. It was my first exposure to sort of professional television, like network television, CBS. Walker was tell me your granddad didn't like Walker, or your dad, or, it was the absolute go-to. Hey, Walker's on. We gotta watch him be the good guy. I mean, from that long lineage of Gunsmoke to Bonanza to, whatever sheriff was wearing the white hat, even though Walker typically wore a black hat.
Yeah. Well, let me just say that you take a roundhouse better than anybody else I've seen on TV. So kudos
at
to you.
some point, Chuck had so many stunt doubles, you didn't know who you were fighting. And you just hope that if it was him, you just hope that you knew the choreograph well enough that you didn't really kick him. Last thing you want to do is kick the boss or punch the boss. Stunt doubles, they could take it. Chuck could take it too. That guy was in great shape, or still is.
Yeah. I love to say that the people who are making jokes about him are really the ones that should be just looking at the facts, which they're not jokes. They're called Chuck Norris facts, right? And I mean, I actually, even when we started this show, tried to reach out to the originator, the person who founded the Chuck Norris Facts website, just to see, like, where did you get all this from? And maybe one day we'll get there. But for today, though, we're celebrating you, Lew. We wanted to.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I like how you put that, celebration. And again, like the lifetime, I still have some things to do, but yeah, we could lift some glad hands for some of the things I've done. How's that?
Well, what we like to do is really kind of tell your origin story to start off, and looking at your background and everything. A lot of things point towards you obviously living in Texas for a while, but you're originally from Louisiana, isn't that correct?
Yeah.
And so. Yeah, I guess. So what part of Louisiana are you from?
It's, New Orleans, which is getting beat up right now with the Ida. Yeah. Ida's kicking. We just reached out to a bunch of friends, and they're all, suffering a little bit. So thoughts and prayers out to the folks in the Gulf. Mm-hmm. Not just New Orleans, but all along the Gulf Coast that are dealing with that for sure. So that's kind of part and parcel of that part of the country. And everyone always asks, well, why do they continue to stay there? And it's just a way of life. It's just, it's just in the blood, and it doesn't leave unless you need to go be an actor or a writer or a musician. Then you probably are going to look for a place to present your wares, like New York or Los Angeles or Chicago.
Yeah. But it's like living history. And you also have isn't one of the World War II museums there, or the D-Day Museum, I thought was there. So
it's the World War II Museum, which is incredible. It's a virtual participatory experience. So you actually get on a train and head to a B-52 bomber and fly overseas and go to boot camp. I mean, you go through the experience through a virtual reality, and it's crazy, and it's amazing. If you get to New Orleans, take some time off of Bourbon Street to go out and educate yourself through that museum. It's amazing.
Yeah. I'm a military brat. I haven't been able to get down there just yet, but one day I will. And what kind of led me down that path was to really explore a little bit more about, what Lew does. How does Lew spend his time? Because you have a life in photos. Yeah, I love getting to just look at the photos you take. As far as maybe what you're eating that day, maybe where you're traveling to that day. I mean, how do you spend your free time, Lew?
Well, apparently I take a lot of pictures, but it's not as much as, but what you just said is sort of validates why I take pictures, because I think there's a life in pictures. We used to look at magazines, or I was a kid that saw things in magazines, and I used to be amazed at the magazine Life, Life, which was just that. And it was always something interesting. And I just thought, wow, would I ever get to see anything like that? And lo and behold, I have. So I tried to do that, and I post them because I think they have a life, and I think a life can be shared. I don't post them to boast or post them to promote that I'm anything or entitled or experiencing anything more than anyone else, but I post them to share, or at least prompt an idea, actually to get one upped. If I post something, I know I love when someone goes, oh yeah, look at this, da da da. And then that thing, I don't mind being topped.
Sure.
But I post things to share and to serve the idea that we all have a story to tell, and that we should tell our stories. It makes us feel better, not just to tell, but to listen. And I think that's why I know that is why I do what I do. I love telling a story. I love listening to a good story. So, as you know, I love baseball. That's my upbringing. When I was a little boy, my granddad took me to the ballpark to play ball. And in fact, I have a, you can't see it. Well, you can see it, Mark. But this was my first glove when I was a little boy. And this was actually my uncle's glove from the 1950s, my granddad's son's glove. So this glove's like from the 50s. And
Nice.
and in the 70s, I had to go play with this, which technically wasn't very efficient, and it was also embarrassing. And I tried to lose it. I tried to tell my granddad that I lost it. And the reason was because I was embarrassed. It wasn't a cool new Rawlings or a Wilson. And I thought that if I lost a glove, I'd get one of those cool new ones that all the other kids had. And my granddad, he found where I had lost it. And so I learned that lesson, and I've always had this ever since. And it's so dear to me. I've had 50 brand new gloves. I got 5 brand new gloves in the garage that I've never broke out of the box, but that one is in my office with me. So I love baseball, have been playing all along since I was a young boy. And I always think that there's something that grabs you, and passion is a great word to use. And I think, what is yours? And so mine would be baseball, and it's followed me, or I've followed it ever since I was that 8-year-old boy. And I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed studying it. I still enjoy studying it. I enjoy viewing it. I enjoy observing it. I played all the way through high school, went on, got a college scholarship, played college ball. After college was taken and selected by the Mariners, went out and played with the Mariners in the minor leagues, traded to the Astros, became an Astro in the minor leagues. And then after I got done playing, scouted and coached in the minor leagues, and then became an executive for the Astros all the way through until I followed a girl into a building to ask for a date. And it was a theater. And I saw what they were doing, and I was like very taken with what they were doing. And I was like, that's my people. Look what they're doing. I can do that, which it couldn't do. And I thought I could. So then I took some time, and I got fired from the Astros. Actually, they didn't say it was being fired. They said, we're just not rehiring you because we think we know something you don't, and that is this passion you have. You should pursue it. And if you stay in baseball, you'll never will, because baseball is also a pursuit and an all-encompassing lifestyle. So they kind of kicked me out of the nest, and I decided one of the few times to listen to somebody in my life, take their advice, and I did pursue it. Went to Brooklyn College and learned about acting and how to do it, and then came back to Houston and just started floundering in local theater, like garage theater, like
Sure.
community theater, like dinner theater, like, and then doing small plays until the smaller Lord House Theater recognized my skills, and then the bigger theater in town, the big professional theater, recognized my skills. So I got the opportunities to work at higher levels towards professional. And I never really got the opportunity to go out and do commercials very much. This was in Houston, Texas,
Yeah.
because I was kind of, Houston was sort of what they called the middle America a market. And it was very, at that time, it was very cookie cutter, straight, very Anglo, very trustworthy, very kind of, we used to call them jock, you know, and, you know, and so it was interesting that I couldn't get any work that way. And on film, I couldn't get any work on film. And so I was just doing theater, and finally a New York director hired me to do a commercial. And that's about the time that Walker, Texas Ranger, requested me to come in and audition, and they were kind enough to give me an opportunity to do that show. And I started, taking off in the film and television world. But I had to be selected by somebody out of New York City that was sort of out of the box thinking. A director who still directs today. He does film and television, named Matt Harrison. And it was just it was a Texas lottery commercial, but it was a cool spot and people took notice of me. And then the people at Walker said, bring that kid down here and let's see if he and Chuck could be good. The thing about that show, Mark, is that, Chuck isn't the most, he's not the tallest guy on the set.
Sure.
And so there's a mark when you walk into audition, and the casting directors, when you walk through the doorway, and if you're above that mark by too much, you're not getting hired.
Ooh, okay.
It's based on you're too tall. And so too tall is not a good thing in that. It's really good on the, playground, choosing up sides on the basketball team. It's really bad for a Walker, Texas Ranger audition.
I'm sure for me, it would not be so much the height line, it'd be a width line. I'd walk in, they go, no, that guy's his shoulders are just too big. We need somebody else.
They like that because, the wider they are, the more they fall for Chuck. Now, that being said, by the way, I have to put a asterisk by that statement, because there's a new Walker, Texas Ranger coming out this year. And that gentleman, Mr. Pilecki, Jared, I think, he's got some height, so we don't have to worry. 6 foot, you don't have to worry about that. You're in the game. So maybe even you might be too short. Maybe if you're not tall enough, like going on a ride, you don't get to do the Walker experience nowadays. Maybe all the tall guys they didn't cast should get a chance. Of course, they'd be 70, but
Well, I love that you're talking about how you broke into the industry. And before we get there is a fan question I wanted to get to, our first fan question of the night. So when digging through some of these old photos of yours, one of our fans pointed out that you had a photo that mentioned a late afternoon with Charlie Sheen and getting to hang out with him. And so I was interested to hear about that story.
That's kind of how it all started, interestingly, because I was working with the Astros, and I was scouting, and I was an executive, and somehow and this was in the old Astrodome days. This is before Minute Maid Field. This is before the Astros, garbage ball, garbage can, and everything. This is still back where we were good, but we were always a second place runner up to the Giants or the Dodgers in the National League West Division back in those days. And so There was a guy that I was to meet. I was to bring a bag of balls, and I was to bring my uniform and some bats and gloves. And I went down there thinking I was going to do a tryout for somebody, that I was going to be, some wealthy person's kid. And it ended up being Charlie Sheen. And he was in town doing a movie called The Chase, and he wanted to prepare for Major League Two. And so
Cool.
he would lease the Astrodome every night after they filmed and work out. And I was his workout partner. So we hung out, and we played and worked out a lot in baseball. And then I got to kind of experience this like Hollywood movie star. And he had a birthday party, and at that birthday party, two guys, Bob Deere and Irby Smith, came to his birthday party, and they were doing a movie called Angels in the Outfield for Disney in Los Angeles and Oakland. And they said, Lew, why don't you come do our movie? Don't go do Charlie's, because you're just going to be his caddy. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, go stand on your own 2 feet for us. And I'm like, yeah. And so I did do their movie. And I think I only had one line, and I played a lot of catch with Matthew McConaughey. And taught him to throw. And Adrian Brody can't be taught to throw. He just doesn't have the athleticism. But that was when my team, the Astros, were sold yet again. And there was a new general manager by the name of Bob Watson, the guy that had played for the Astros. And I knew Bob really well, and I was really happy he was taking over. But he called me, Lew, baby, hey, this Bull, Bob Watson, you don't have to hurry back, because I'd taken all these accrued vacation days. And I was like, oh, I know what that means. So I did hurry back. And that's when he was the guy that said, I think you should pursue this acting thing. And keep in mind, I was a glorified extra on Angels in the Outfield. There was no reason to say, I think you should pursue this acting thing. But I think that people saw in me about what I had done as a baseball player and what I had been as a professional in that world, and recognized what my fortitude was and my passion. So they saw that in me, maybe as acting went too. And they're like, if he could do it in baseball, that little guy, he could probably do it in acting too. And he should give it a try. I don't know if we take the time or interest in people. We should, because that type of support's always been fuel for me. So Charlie Sheen never really helped me. Once I came to Hollywood, maybe he returned 1 or 2 calls. He wanted me to go play in the league that he played in. But in a weird way, maybe he kind of got me spirited to be an actor. He loved just the fact that we were baseball guys and we could, throw, and I knew all the players and had played. And I loved the fact that he knew Emilio Estevez. I like Charlie. I thought he was a great dude. And it was well before his alternate lifestyle, I suppose. But there's a great picture of me. I think I'd been catching Charlie in a bullpen, and he and I were sweaty, and we just got done working out. We got Astro gear on, and I think if I were to post that picture again, I would say cheaters, just because we were wearing Astro stuff. And I'm sure that I've cheated death, and I think Charlie has too. How's that? And so we might be cheaters.
Well, looking at some of your photos here, Lew, I've heard you say this before too, whether it was at a con or in an interview, that, these are my people. And it seems like wherever I see you in a photo, especially when it comes to, some of these acting or some of these productions you're on, I definitely always get that vibe. Like, yeah, these are my people. Like, it looks like no matter who you're with family. And I imagine that's got to make the job that much more fulfilling, whether it's, voice acting, doing stuff for video games, TV, film. I mean, you look like you're having a blast anywhere you go.
Yeah, I think it's hard or difficult if you're not, if you're not having fun, it is work, and that's the last thing you want it to be. You want to find joy in everything, even chores or taking out the garbage or homework or what we call work. And somehow our task is to change it from work, that ugly word, to fun. And so I don't know how you go about doing that, but I've always tried. And I love people. I love talking. And so if I can get in a conversation with somebody, that's a lot of joy for me. And it's not, I found it's not that hard to have a conversation. People like to talk, and they like to listen, believe it or not. And I think when you give yourself a chance to be somebody's friend, or at least a partner in a conversation, you'll be surprised how often you'll be spirited, enthused, and fulfilled with that. And so I'm never having an expectation, but I'm always looking for an opportunity to be surprised. And so I have a lot of fun on set. It's work. I know we're showing up to do a job. It's a lot of work. When I say work, I mean there's a task at hand. We're not given a lot of time to do it, and there's a lot to do in a short time. It's eastbound and down every day. We got a long way to go in a short time to get there. But with grace and with joy, you can make it better, and usually that will help the process in getting it not just completed but done really well. And so and in the pictures that I do post, I try to post with others to let the world know that others are having a good time too, and that this is fun, or this is cool. It's really cool to take a picture with someone that's candid, that doesn't get to take those kind of pictures. It's not every day you get to take a picture with Billy Gibbons when you're sitting at a bar, doing shots of tequila, and that looks like a lot of fun, and it is, and it should be. And so I don't mind posting those, again, to share, not to say, hey, look at me. Invariably somebody else will post a picture of them and Billy Gibbons, and it'll be even cooler, and I'll be like, all right, that's great. That's exactly the response I wanted. And so, or I like to present, when I do post, kind of an existential thought, something that's subtextually more. I want you to think about what you're seeing beyond what you're seeing. I want you to have a sense of. So sometimes, like right now, I'm doing a little posting, a series. I took a trip to New York with my family, and I'm posting New York, but adding songs to it. And typically they're New York-based songs, but just something to elicit a thought, a memory, a feeling. Everybody's talking at me, Harry Nilsson. You're walking down the streets of New York. It's perfect, right? You're just immediately Midnight Cowboy, and then somebody will think, oh, I love that song, and I love New York, and that reminds me of George Benson, New York, or that reminds me of Rihanna, New York, or Sinatra, New York, or Billy Joel, New York State of Mind, or however that goes. And I'm just trying to get people to think a little outside the box. Now, that being said, I've used the word posting a lot, so clearly it's not like I'm sending digital dissection personal photos like, hey, take a look at these, Mark. You're seeing them through posting, and I do that. I'm a little handicapped with that because I'm not on Instagram anymore.
Sure.
What happened was I got fished. Do you know that term?
Oh yeah. Yep.
So like there was an incident where I got a message on my DM, I suppose.
Sure.
You're in violation of our terms. If you don't talk to us about that within 24 hours, we're going to shut your account down. And it looked exactly like an Instagram official. It had the insignia. And of course, I did it. And the minute I clicked on the link, I lost my account to
Oh, wow.
someone stole it. And so they in turn used my verified account to go out to 500,000 verified celebrity types as Lew Temple doing the same thing, phishing them. So I reported it to Instagram. Instagram fixed it and they said, we're sorry, we got your account back. But then shortly after we retrieved it, the HAL 2001 Space Odyssey, the algorithm that is Instagram, shut me down for the same reason. And it just became this like technical. So I'm like, that's an AI thing.
Yeah.
And Instagram's like, it is. We're trying to recover it from our algorithm. They call it an algorithm. And I'm like, you don't have any control. It did what it wanted.
Twitter suffers the same thing. Twitter has the same problem. Yeah.
So I haven't recovered Instagram, nor have I rebuilt an Instagram. Not because I'm overly upset about anything. I'm just like, why bother? So I do post on Twitter, a Facebook fan page, and believe it or not, LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
So I find, for any of you business folk out there, I find LinkedIn to be like the business savvy. If you want to build something or get a job or LinkedIn, you're not going to. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I like Twitter because you can say things on Twitter and you can make a statement on Twitter maybe more than the picture.
Sure.
I'm not sure. Look, I have nothing against Instagram. I just don't do it. I'm waiting for the beyond Instagram 2.0, Insta hologram. That's what I'm waiting for. Hologram, not Instagram. Hologram.
Let's build it, Lou. I'm down. What I wanted to actually kind of weave in here, because we've got a good segue to it, would actually be a little bit more about your journey, in your career, because you've got a lot of fans that have followed you throughout your horror films, right? And working with Rob Zombie. And I know you've talked a lot about that relationship, but our fan question for this relates directly to how you turned into the horror genre, and if your preparation had changed as an actor, shifting into that. So curious to know about that.
That's a great question. Whoever asked that question maybe is a college professor. That could be a writing assignment. Let's make that a writing assignment for the University of Digital Dissection. I had been a horror aware person. I had watched horror movies like any kid, Dawn of the Dead. Most of my horror things were kind of the creature features, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman. I've done the basics, maybe Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which blew my mind, scared the hell out of me. But I wasn't what you'd say an aficionado. So I had been in Texas, and I had booked a movie with a casting director named Monica Mickelson, who always remembered me. It was a movie called Serving Sarah with Matthew Perry, and I'm trying to think of the British lady's name. She used to date Hugh Grant. She was really attractive way back in the day. Anyway, I ended up not doing that movie. I got sick and couldn't do that movie, and I was replaced by Mike Judge. But Monica Mickelson, the casting director, never forgot me. And when I moved to Hollywood, she brought me in to read for this movie called The Devil's Rejects. So she sent me the script. I read it, and I was like, I've never read anything like this. I don't even know. This is crazy. Who would do this? But I'm an actor in Hollywood, and so I stand and deliver. So I went in and auditioned and impressed Rob. And so but when I went in, it was really cool because Elizabeth Hurley is the lady's name that I was
Oh,
trying
yep.
to remember.
Yep.
Now, Steve Zahn was auditioning for Devil's Rejects, Jeremy Davies. These were two guys that I really liked and respected, and a bunch of other like cats here in Hollywood. And I hadn't really landed yet, so I wasn't.
Sure.
And I'd seen all of their work. I was like, wow, this must be better than I thought. And so then I got word from Monica, hey, Rob really liked you. And then I was like, oh my God. And then she called again. She said, yeah, you're it. You're getting an offer for Adam Bancho to do this job. And I freaked out. And I was like, oh no. And I called a friend of mine named Walton Goggins, who's another Southern fella, a great actor, who had done House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I said, hey, I'm a good Christian boy from the South, and this devil worshiper wants to hire me. And he laughed. He did exactly what you were doing. He said, hey, do yourself a favor, shut up and go do that job. You'll have a great time. It'll be wonderful artistic experience, and you'll have a friend for life. And those were true words. That was my introduction to getting hired. Then we went to the table read with this group of veteran actors from the genre in Bill Moseley, in Sid Haig, God rest his soul, and William Forsythe and Ken Foray. And there was something different about what they were doing. They were leaning into everybody's personal space, and ever so slightly when they were talking and doing their work, they were kind of really creeping into your world, and it was unnerving, and I recognized it. And I watched them work, and I learned a lot about what horror, like real horror acting is. Don't just be loud, don't be mean, don't be scary, but really do the thing that is invasive, which is what they do, and it's such a rare quality. And so I got, through a blessing, to have that exposure. And one of the things that I've always been is aware. I'm good at observation. I was as a player because I had to learn to survive in that game, and I was as a scout because I was looking for players. I had to observe them to see what their projected talents could be. And so I observed these actors, and I learned from Jeffrey Lewis and Sid Haig and Bill Forsythe, and especially Bill Moseley. And I'm grateful for that. So yes, there is a different tone when it's really good horror acting, when it's really at its pinnacle. There is a different approach. There's a different invasion of space. It's less about you and more about you. It's more about you, and it makes you it pushes you away, but then it brings you back in. So it's really great. It's really great. So that Devil's Rejects, I had never wanted to get into horror movies, or I'd never pursued horror movies. I'd never thought about horror movies. And then of course I got the opportunity through Rob Zombie, and I recognized that, and I recognized what it was. And Bill Moseley would tell me, he said, hey, look, in horror movies, you get the opportunity to expand on a character, not just build, but go beyond building a character. And oftentimes, studio, action stuff, you might not get that chance to fill in what the horror genre allows you to. So I respect it. And of course, then going back to the fans, or as I call them, the audience, they're so well-versed and loyal. And so I think you can't dismiss that or deny it. And I'm very appreciative, actually. But I've never got into it thinking I'm a baseball guy and that equates to horror movies. Baseball and country western singing, hell yes. But baseball and horror movies, maybe not so much, although they both, Bats and Negan make good bedfellows, right?
Well, you're getting into something that I actually wrote in my notes right when I first got the opportunity to talk to you. And it's really the fact that the art of dying is something that Lew Temple does with style. And I mean, you've been killed off by Arlie Ermy, Michael Madsen, I mean, Halle Berry, even Sean Bean, who dies buying groceries, took a shot at you. And part of this ties into what I've heard you mention a couple times about honoring characters, that you specifically honor, you know, the deaths of characters, and that it's a privilege to honor people who have passed away, you know, in life as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love to hear more about how you honor, you know, your
Thanks for
characters.
bringing that up, because it's I find it important, and unfortunately, or depending on where you're at in philosophical or spiritual matters, some will say in good fortune because you go to a better place, but we all go through this, the end of days, and so I find that honoring somebody's death, it's an honor to be present in that form, and that if you're there to help them or make it easier, then you get something from that. Maybe it's a gift, or maybe it's just something that you carry with you down the line. So I look at my characters, and instead of just the cursory fiery crash and burn, I like to give them their moment in death, wherever that may be or how it may be. And at least on a reflective standpoint, my preparation, but it's a goodbye, and I think it's honest and integral and real, and I want to do that justice always. It's really disappointing when you're on a #1 television show and you get a call that you're going to take a bullet to the head next week. It's really, it's soul crushing, it's deflating, but you must get through that, and you must do a good job for your character. You must honor your character with respect and integrity, and do the best job because everyone else is observing, they're viewing that, and they want to honor the character, and through you they have to get that opportunity. So yeah, that's I've thought about, Mark, putting out a coffee table book called All of Me. Why not take all of me? I have died in so many ways, and you're right, Sean Bean. You know, I've gotten Michael Myers has taken me out, Leatherface has taken me out. You know, I think I guess I need Freddy Krueger, and I need Jason. But you know, Halle Berry's not bad fare to get taken out with, and so there's been so many and so often that I think if I just was a guy that I actually think that maybe a guy like Sean has a sense of integrity and artistry about dying, and maybe he gets hired to do that better than most.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's kind of like a recurring joke at this point, right? Like if Sean Bean's in a movie, you just don't get too attached, right? And you've kind of got that same reputation in a sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe I'm a poor man. Maybe if I can die with some integrity, maybe I'm hired to do a good turn for a good character as well. So sometimes, particularly my family will go, "Hey, you didn't die in this one." And I'm like, "I know, isn't that great?" "Well, you damn near were the hero because you didn't die. I mean, this movie must be about you." And everybody has a good laugh. But yeah.
In the show notes for this episode, Lou, we're going to put the website that actually tracks what properties you've died in, because there's a collective list. It's all there. And so
hilarious.
Yeah, well, I'll share that with you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It just goes to show you there is an analytic for anything. And you know, I used to Well, I used to, read a script and go, "Oh, I die in this one,"
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, "Oh, I die in this one." Well, you know what? First of all, not many of us have died. Some of us have had that experience and come back, but or near death experiences. But so it requires there. Look, there's not a lot of right or wrong, and it requires a lot of imagination, and it requires part of that terror of imagination, or
Mm-hmm.
I choose to make it the other way, maybe occasionally poetic.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite dying scene in colors is Robert Duvall. Just his death was so poetic
Mm-hmm.
and quiet, and I think that's just alarming and heart wrenching. Oh,
Sure.
when I was a little boy, it struck me that Frosty went into that greenhouse and didn't come out, and that he was just this puddle.
Mm-hmm.
And that just struck me. As a little boy, I never got over that. Where'd he go? Oh no. Is
Yeah.
that him, that water? Oh man. And I've always looked at blood that way. As that's your first home run in Little League. That's your first kiss. That's your first job. That's your first kid. That's all. Everything is that blood coming out of you. Because when you're laying there, you can't put it back in. You try. Sometimes you'll see me in a scene trying to stop the bleeding or put it back in, because I recognize what it is. It's your life. That's all you are, is that blood.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what I look at poetically. Thank you. That's a good question. Was that
Yeah.
your question? Be honest.
No. These are questions from fans that are responding. So before we do the show, we'll ask, hey, if you've got questions, we want to hear them, send them on in, and so we filter these for quality, Lou. Absolutely.
I can tell, because that's a quality question.
Yeah. Well, the next thing I want to talk to you about, because obviously, Walking Dead's a big part of your career too, but I wanted to ask you about the legend of a live action animated movie called Rango. And
Right.
When we talk about the untold stories, this one some folks don't know about. You get to obviously work with Johnny Depp on this movie, but it's a movie that ended up being animated, but the actors did the actual production. You actually did act these things out.
We made a movie, yeah.
Yeah. What was that
entirely.
like?
So we all had to go through the process of auditioning for our roles, and I didn't know Gore Verbinski. When I had done Domino with Keira Knightley, she had brought me to meet Gore Verbinski, who she thought I would be good in the Pirates series. And I met him, and he took her word for it, and he offered me a job that my agents passed on. So I really could have been in Pirates and probably had a better house. And I don't have those agents anymore, by the way. But
Wow.
so when Gore came around to Rango, he remembered and he brought me in, and I really wanted this particular role. The mouse that the spoons, the mouse, and I kept pushing Gore, and he's like, "No, I got this other guy that I wanted you to do, Mr. Fergus." And I had always remembered childhood memories. Don't underestimate your childhood, and give it as much credit as you can, because it is there for a treasure chest for you to hearken on later, of which I do all the time. It is your imagination treasure chest. And so as an actor, I do nothing but go into my imagination and look for things. And one of which is a animated record that I used to listen to called Robin Hood. It was the Disney presentation. Oodalolly golly, what a day. And it had a guy named Pat Buttram, and he was playing the Sheriff of Nottingham. Oodalolly golly, what a day.
Yeah.
And I just always loved that voice, Pat Buttram. And so I decided to do that voice for Rango, as Mr. Fergus down at the general store. It's Mr. Merrimack was keeping all the water. I got no credit with him, Beans. And so that was great. And then I remember a show I had watched growing up called Petticoat Junction. And there was a guy named, he was Uncle Joe in Petticoat Junction. I always wanted to do his voice too. So I got to do Sergeant Turley, just a little conjunctivitis, sir. Don't mind. It's a family. It's not contagious. And so that was great. So yes, we worked all through the animation of that project by acting for the animators. Gore filmed it on film, and we had sets, we had a wardrobe, we had, we were filmed, we were off book. Johnny didn't realize he brought a script. He's like, hey, I got to know all the, oh man. And he had the line load, right? And we would do these dances, and we had to walk around like our animals and have that certain little bop about us that our character would. And it was one of the most enjoyable experiences that I've ever had. And so I'm so grateful. And by the way, I don't have to tell you, Gore's goal was to knock Pixar off of their podium. Yeah. And we did. We won an Oscar.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's great. Looking at the movie, you know why. It's so cinematic.
Oh, it's a beautiful movie.
It's so good. And it's so rich in double entendre and adult story. It really is. And we just really, we had such a good time doing it. And everybody's so good in it, by the way. Rango is, I think, one of my favorite experiences on a movie set for all the reasons that I just mentioned, but also because it's so damn good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really good as an animated movie, and it still holds up. During the pandemic, it played a lot, obviously, because you're playing animated stuff for the kids, and it's still good. It's still it was amazing, and to watch people. Well, some interesting things are that Bill Nighy had never done an American accent before, so that was the first time he'd ever done an American accent. What else was interesting about that? Stephen Root is hilarious. Yeah. And he made every day just a lot of fun. My daughter was just born. Actually, she was like a year and a half or two, and Abigail Breslin used to come and watch her a little bit on set. Cool. Yeah, that was super cool. I went on to do a movie with Abigail called Wicked Blood later. Abigail was just a young girl, and then all of a sudden now I'm doing a movie and she's a teenager with her, which is amazing. And just so many cool things with that film. And it was such a powerhouse talent, from Isla Fisher to, this guy named Johnny Depp, who I later went to work for in Lone Ranger as well. And so to get to see Johnny work, like his process, and again, observe, we were talking about, like, it's just fun to observe. And he's one of the best to observe. If you watch, you just get such a education. It's great. Yeah. Denzel Washington is another guy in that same vein. And so I think, when you get the experience to be around the giants, you should watch. You should take note and be marveled. It's good to be impressed in life. It's good to have your head explode over somebody else's talent. It's good to meet your heroes. It's good to go up and say hello. Regardless, it's good to tell somebody you really appreciate, you like, I'm a fan. It's good. I think I don't want to bother them, or I don't want to infringe on their privacy. Poo. You got something to say, you should tell people. And I receive that all the time. And people, they must tell me what happened when Axel got killed at that night. They have to. It's a pilgrimage for them to tell me. I threw my remote, and it ended up in the fish tank. And So I recognize all those things. But yeah, thank you for bringing Rango up. It's a beautiful thing. In fact, no, this works, but. Can you see Rango?
Oh yeah. So just to describe it for the folks at home, wow, I just get to see like an art piece of Rango on Lew's wall there. I absolutely love that movie. My son loves the movie too, and I'm sure one day my daughter's gonna love it just as much because
Did anybody? My daughter got a little fearful at Rattlesnake Jake, and she was just at the age when it came out. Let's say four-ish.
Yeah.
That 4 to 5, because it is, the animation is so good. It's kind of real, and it could be a little scary.
There's an intensity to it, yeah, for kids for sure, because it does feel like it's a film that's. Let's put it this way: if you remember what a PG rated film was in the 80s,
yeah.
This kind of feels like that type of vibe where it's still a kids movie, right? But it's it's a little bit more intense than your average one, and so I think there's a lot of value in it either way. But speaking of Walking Dead, we both knew we were going to get there at some point, and it does lead into yet another fan question. So fans have actually been very interested in how you prep for roles. And I think it's because of the diversity and the range that you've displayed, right?
Yeah, right. So, it should be, yeah.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be ever the same old thing. Like I've got a suitcase right there, and it's all my bag of tricks. And I recognized early on that's where I was heading as a colloquial Southern guy, and that's not where I wanted to stay because I thought it would limit me. My favorite thing is what I call discovery, not unlike an attorney in preparation for a court case. And the discovery is the research that you put in to build the character. So in other words, you're building a house, you're building the backstory of this character, which oftentimes is, or mostly is not, in the script inherently. So you've got to kind of fill in. The foundation is there, but it's your time. You have to do the drywall. And paint, and do the finish work and the baseboards and the electricity. And so that is when you're going in and you're looking at what a meth addict really goes through. Where do they start? What are their mannerisms? What are their flaws? What are their strengths and weaknesses? And all these things that can be part of your build. And I'm just fascinated with that research. I'm just fascinated with that in this office, that time that I put in to design that, to build, to give that person a backstory. Did he play catch with his dad? Was his dad not around? Did he play catch with his mom? Did he play catch at all? Did he like ketchup? Or was he a mustard guy? All these things, that are irrelevant but become so detailed and give your work specificity. And so that's the discovery, which is my favorite part of what I do. I actually, again, don't really enjoy the performance aspect, the day of the job, as much as I do the rehearsal or the process of getting there. And I think writers get to do this inherently for a living. They're researching, they're writing material all the time. I think that's a great thing to in study. In study is a good place to be in life, and so I spend a lot of time doing it and in preparation. And I start with a character intellectually and philosophically. I start from the inside out, and that informs my physicality. Now, someone like Johnny Depp, he works the other way. He starts from the outside in. So his is about how the guy stands, and how the guy's posture is. And I think Leo DiCaprio works that way too. How does he walk? You know,
Yeah.
Tom Hanks is a guy like immediately, what's his dictation? What's his voice sound like? What's his rate of speech? How he talks? How he lands his words? His syllabic
Yeah.
cadence? And everybody has sort of, and that's where they start on their work. But for me, it's more about a mindset, a want, a need, an intellectual. What I think every character, by the way, started as a child and innocent, and kind and sweet and
Yeah.
hopeful. And where did it go wrong? Where did it go wrong for some of the guys that I end up doing on the fringe?
Yeah.
Where, in spite of it going wrong, what gives the guy humanity? And I'm really into looking for finding redeeming qualities in my characters these days. So easy just to write them off as assholes.
Well,
And so I try not to.
Universally, I think that the response that you mentioned with fans that threw their remotes when Axel was, unfortunately, shot from a distance, when that happened, the first things that I was thinking of was, for one, you managed to capture what I thought Axel was from the comic books that the comic books didn't have enough time to really get to. And so the fact that you're delivering this charismatic speech, you're talking about life, and then suddenly it just disappears. It didn't just encapsulate Axel really well. It also proved to you what kind of world you're in The Walking Dead. And so it was like you've talked about how there's a poetic side to death. This is kind of where I was with this, and it leads into what the audience has asked about in this process was, how much input did you have into the creative process behind what happened to Axel? And the second part of this was, of course, your death party for Axel as well, that they want to know about. So,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about it.
Well, I was informed by the showrunner at the time that we were in trouble, and I just had a great meeting with him about the future. So I was sure that he wasn't calling me shortly after to have a conversation about the end of the future.
Sure.
But he was, and he said, "I'm in a jam. The governor's showing up, and either it's the big show or it's a precursor to the war." And I'm like, okay. And he said, "And you're right. You're the bullseye. You're the target, because otherwise I've got to take out a regular, and I think I'm not ready to do that, but we are considering it. There are some series regulars that are also on the list, but you're on that list, and I'm just letting you know." And I'm like, okay. Are you letting me know to let me know? Like, I'm going to talk you out of this right now. You do what I call the denial dance.
Yeah.
And he laughed, and I'm like, what about so-and-so? He's an asshole. Let's get rid of him. No. Okay, I get it. All right, well, that makes sense. I mean, and so he said, "I don't know how it's going to go, but it just wanted to let you know." And I'm like, well, so I got to go to bed with this for the next, week? He said, probably 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Said, yeah. I said, okay. So, but thankfully, Andrew Lincoln caught wind, because he was, he's our Tom Brady.
Sure.
And he went to bat for me with the studio. He said, "I really think we should try to keep Axel." And, it got down to the 11th hour to make the decision. And I finally got the call, and it was me. And I was like, And then again, I went right into, I got to honor Axel. I'm sorry, bud, but I got to honor you and do a good job. How do I do that? So they were kind and invited me, like, to come and, maybe you could give some ideas how you'd like to go out. And I was like, no, the writers, they're good. They know what they're doing. What I would ask is if we could figure out how to do it where it's shocking. I think it would be great. And I remember that Zapruder tape. I think it's Zapruder. It's where Kennedy was shot.
Yeah. Yep.
And the head, and how final and shocking it was. And so they took that and built it. And on the day my task was to not play the end of the scene in the front. So I did everything I could in that whole scene to make it seem like it's a happy day.
Yeah.
You know, and getting on with Carol and a little hide and seek and a little flirtation and a little self, you know, tell on myself a little bit and invite her to talk about, you know, and she finally smiles and and it's good. And look, these two are really getting on and they're working together. Oh my God, he's shot. He's dead. Oh my God. And he's in her arms. And I
Yeah.
wanted it to be that it was in her hands and blood was on her hands and she had to deal with it.
Yeah.
In and amongst this, you know, this not just a tragic moment, but this like intense moment where she had to, you know, cover herself for her life.
Yeah.
And so I just decided to potato sack on her, and she, you know, put all my weight on her, and she had to carry me and down to the ground, and then uses me as a shield wisely. And so most of that was all kind of in the moment improv.
Yeah.
And it was really great. Fun fact, the decision had been made so late that the special effects team was unable to do what they call a life cast, which is when they build a mold for your face and your head and your shoulders that they can put on a mannequin that
Sure.
you could, you know, that you can take all the bullet hits. So it doesn't have to be you, obviously.
Yeah.
Oddly, though, Greg Nicotero, who is the head of special effects and is now, you know, the executive producer and director of this show, he's a great director. He bears a certain resemblance in the pate or the forehead to the nose. And
Sure.
so he used his life cast to be Axel. And man, it looked, even my wife couldn't tell the difference. It was perfect.
Nice.
And so that's actually a dummy of Nicotero instead of a dummy of Lew. The death party was great because the greatest part of the death party is that when the check comes around, you just pass it or it goes right by you. Mine was headed up, interestingly, by Stephen Yin. He was kind of the host.
Okay.
And
Cool.
we had worked enough, but Norman's always going to kind of be the guest that swans in and makes a big splash. But Stephen did all the arrangements and the details, and we went to a very nice restaurant with a private room, and everybody was so kindly sad.
Sure.
And they, so man, I'm so sorry. And mostly I was like, dude, you have no idea how close it was to being you. You'd really be sorry if only you knew. And so it was great. I think people underestimate the idea, like a good team, you start to rely on your teammates, and all of a sudden when someone leaves, you realize, hey, we're down a player. How are we going to, this guy really helped. This guy was important to what we, that thing that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting used to him, and now he's gone. And it affects people, and also the thing about family. Well, I mean, if The Walking Dead does anything, it promotes family. And that community that it's built amongst itself and its audience as family, it hurts when somebody leaves. Lew goes on, but Axel's gone. And so there's a real palpable grief to that, and the audience knows that, the fans know that, they go through it too. It's harsh, but it works. And so I was honored to be invited to be on the show. I was honored to participate and to still be part of it in a forever, as an interesting character that was very serviceable at the time to the show, so it's been great. It's kind of always the gift that keeps on giving type thing.
Yeah. Which actually reminds me of of what the audience was asking about next. I've shifted from fan to audience because that's the term you gave me. We're going to go with it.
Yeah.
So after your time as Axel, who, was basically, he's the character that meant well, maybe made some mistakes in his past, but then we shift into the Fifth Ward with Mayor Bob Coletti, and we kind of flush that down. So this is what happens afterward. What kinds of challenges was there in your headspace moving from an Axel to a Bob Coletti?
Well, you just go into first of all, socioeconomically, you just immediately have to change gears in an essence and a tone from being fringe and wanton to being entitled and powerful. And so that requires just a different personality trait. You start into that alpha personality, that politician. And so, it's quite different. And I think, though, interesting in different ways. It's an interesting character that he just had an agenda, and he thought the agenda, Mayor Coletti, he's trying to get a football stadium built in Houston. And if that requires, genociding a neighborhood, so be it. And that's a true story in a lot of our communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was interesting. And again, I'm just trying to serve the logic of what it requires. Look, I'm doing the best. The greater good here is to take this neighborhood out, this low income, multicultural, minority neighborhood, and making it a point of commerce for the city. Mm-hmm. And this is going to be good for us all in the long run. Not the people I'm mowing down, but that's collateral damage. So it sort of becomes this alternate guy, maybe. And so again, not trying to, twirl a mustache, and, but maybe have a little of the governor, a little ethos and pathos in there with it. But so what that is it's a great challenge to go right from there and into the next guy that is different. He's even though it's the same coin in Lew Temple, it's a different side of it for sure. And so I appreciate that. I like that challenge.
Well, kind of coming full circle. We really appreciate you going on this journey with us. And I am right there with you that a Lifetime Achievement Award does not mean we're done. If you look if you look at your IMDb right now, I mean, you've got so much coming up. I think when we first reached out to you, you were shooting in Montana, which I believe is that for the murder at Immigrant Gulch that you were shooting for?
It is, yeah. It's really fun. It's a great film. That's a Western. Of course, I love Westerns. I'll have two coming out this next year. One is Corsicana, which is about Bass Reeves, who was the first African-American U.S. Marshal, who, of course, at that time in 1884, he couldn't get a posse. There were no white guys that would ride with a black marshal. So he literally was the original Lone Ranger. And I'm a villain or a desperado outlaw that he's chasing down. And so it's a good old fashioned 48 hours essentially. Yeah. And then the other Western that I did, this Murder at Immigrant Gulch, is so much fun because it's a small town whodunit, and it's a thriller. And of course, we don't know who did it, but with guys like Gabriel Byrne and Richard Dreyfuss and
Tom Jane too, right?
Thomas Jane. It's so great, and they're amazing again to watch, to observe. And so every now and then I had to catch myself and say, "Oh shoot, I'm in this scene. I better do my part," and of which I do that as a kind of a bully gambler, shyster who is always looking to exploit and take advantage of the situations. And it was a lot of fun. It was just great. Montana's an incredible country. And then
Yeah.
I've just returned from a really cool job. I think I can talk about it, not a lot, but it's called Rosaline and Juliet. And it's
Okay.
basically another take on Romeo and Juliet. And Romeo had uh, a girlfriend before Juliet, and it was Juliet's cousin, Rosaline. And had he stayed with her, he might have lived. So it really focuses on her and him dumping her. It's a comedy and it's great. And
Oh,
got to
cool.
work with Bradley Whitford and Minnie Driver. And we did that in Italy, in Rome. That was so beautiful.
That's awesome.
Uh, yeah, I got to see some. So you'll be seeing some postings about the Colosseum, the Vatican,
Yeah.
the Pope giving his papal address, the Pantheon, those kinds of things that people all know about. But when in Rome, right, you got to do it. You got to do it. And so I'm excited for the future, which is tomorrow. Something great is going to happen. I'd leave that audience my question or my challenge is to wake up and before you do anything, say thank you. See how many days in a row you could do it. It's hard or
Mhm.
difficult. Hard is construction work. It's difficult. That's a task. When your feet hit the floor, say thank you, and see if you can do it 2 days in a row, and that's pretty cool. And and then look for great opportunities that are actually available. I think I've come a long way and had a lot of opportunity because I have somehow been able to remove blinders that keep me stuck in my own way.
Mhm.
And so, even though you have a lot of difficulty, and we do in life, uh, there's a lot of gifts too. And if we just can see past what we think are problems, and maybe change the word if you can in your dialect from problem to practice. It's not a problem, my cell phone bill, it's a practice. And I get to
Mhm.
practice it every month, and I'm just getting better at it. And so make your problems be practices, and you'll go far.
So, Joe, did you learn a thing or two about how Lew Temple celebrates the many characters he's had to say goodbye to?
Yeah, it's really interesting how much he really, really cares about the roles he takes on as well as his methods and how they differ from other actors, and also how well he knows how other actors like get into their characters. And of course his love for his animated film career and how he got his voices was probably my favorite part of this interview.
Isn't it funny how a lot of voice actors tend to base their voices off of people they grew up loving, you know? And I almost fell out of my seat laughing when Lou started talking like this, you know? Just like holy crap. But seriously, like for a guy who has been in a lot of horror movies,
Mhm.
I mean, it's not that I wasn't expecting this because I've seen Lew Temple's interviews and everything. He's just a sweet man.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, dude, he was. I will say this: I was kind of down that week when I interviewed Lou, and some things had happened, and like after talking to him, just really gave me like a completely refreshed perspective on things, and hopefully, folks really enjoy that time that we get to spend with him. But Joe, it is another conclusion, which means shout
More?
outs from the Twitterverse.
Tweet, tweet.
We're doing it again.
There's no good way to echo a tweet, is there? Like, there's nothing. It's just the tweeting.
Yeah, maybe one day when we get better equipment or something, we can get those effects. But right now we can't really do it.
No, right now the $60 Amazon mics are pulling their weight.
We'll tell you what, our first shout out for this week, it's actually about the BKS Show, who you can find at the BKS Show on Twitter. So basically, it's 3 lifelong friends from the Philadelphia area, and they talk a wide variety of topics every week. One week, I actually remember hearing about like tornado safety, and then it shifts into sports for a bit. Then we're talking about men's health for a minute. So, Joe, you can seriously listen into this show at any time, and every week's going to feel different. Like every week is going to be like completely different original content, and I mean it's refreshing from that standpoint.
Yeah,
right?
fantastic. I wish I would have heard it back when we showed up on another podcast and I had to leave mid recording because of a tornado warning.
Yeah, that would have been helpful, man. The reason why we wanted to call extra attention to the BKS Show as well, they are friends of the podcast, and they're just getting back from a brief hiatus. So they could definitely use your support if you could check them out for us and let them know we sent you. So welcome back, guys. It's good to have you back in the saddle.
Yeah, another podcast I give a shout out to is the Dad Needs to Talk podcast with a man only known as Rob. And Rob likes to discuss his life, fatherhood, anime, gaming, tech, and self-investment. And I can say, at least when it comes to this podcast, that's 2 out of 5 ain't bad for similarities between the two of us.
It's true. We avoid fatherhood, not because of like Maury Povich and finding out that we're not. It's just because that's not what we do here. We don't really talk about that all that much. But, Rob does this really well because, yes, there's a lot of things going on here, but there's a really, really good balance. And I think what I love the most about Rob's show is that when he starts off one of his episodes, he takes a little bit of time to get caught up on, the personal side of the mic. And I remember one episode in particular where it was very touching, where he talks about losing his mother. And I believe he actually lost his sister like within like the same year, very close together. And to hear his poise and his advice, and I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that Rob is talking about week in and week out. And so, yeah, you get a little bit of life advice, you get a little bit of entertainment news, and it's just a really, really fun balance. And our show and Rob's are part of the In Nerd Circle, if you've ever seen that hashtag on Twitter. So there are many of us outside of just these 2 shows. So if you ever see that link, go ahead and take a click on it or type it into Twitter. That's once again hashtag In Nerd Circle, and you'll find many shows like ours about gaming, comic books, TV shows, movies, you name it. There's a ton going on there. But yeah, Joe, I think for our last shout out, what we'll do here is mention one of our friends from one of the networks we're part of called Quite the Thing Media.
Oh, yes.
If you remember, Joe, Quite the Thing Media is a Glasgow-based, podcast crew, and we actually joined up with them. I want to say at least it was like maybe a couple months ago. So we're part of a very diverse group of podcasts that do everything from true crime. Some of it is video game related, sports. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of great content that we rub elbows with there. But one of our newest members in that group is the She Will Rock You podcast, which we're very happy to introduce as they celebrate new artists and bands every episode. If you take a look at their website, what their mission is basically to do here is to look to offer fresh perspectives from fans who just love rock music. And the hosts of this show weren't alive when some of their favorite rock bands first came out. Specifically, they mentioned Fleetwood Mac is like one of their favorite bands. And I'm like, you know what? I wasn't even doing much yet when they came out.
No, I got nothing. Definitely not there. Heck, Star-Lord wasn't even there. He doesn't remember that at all. He just got the cassette.
Yeah, the cassette tapes that oddly have music that he shouldn't have access to at
He
times.
should
But
not know. But
Yeah.
that's, hey, he eventually gets the Zune for that. And so,
that's true.
but if you need music newer than a Zune, or maybe just as old, if not older, the She Will Rock You podcast is the place to go.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome at She Will Rock You podcast. They're putting out some pretty cool content. Actually, I think the actual handle is at She Will Rock You pod. So that's She Will Rock the letter U pod POD. So yeah, welcome to the crew. Happy to have you. But otherwise, Joe, we're running out of runway here.
Yeah, a little bit.
So
Yeah,
good to share some more news with folks. And as always, we're happy to bring you another cool interview with one of our favorite actors.
Yeah, even if not also even in this episode, it was a great time.
Yes. Hey, these things happen, schedules conflict. But as always, folks, keep on dissecting.